Chapter 1. Fun Zone. The door to Fun Zone games creaked open with a sound like a dying modem. Slow, metallic, digital. Dust swirled in the beam of dying daylight as the man stepped inside, boots brushing across a carpet half swallowed by vines and loose wires. The store smelled of old plastic, mildew, and something stranger, ozone, like the air just before lightning. Ichigo followed close behind, silent and low to the ground, his tail twitching nervously. His paws no longer sparked. No glow, no hum, just quiet movement and a wary stare. His powers were gone. The man hadn't said anything about it yet. He didn't need to. The silence between them said more than any words could. Shelves lined the store's interior like crumbling monuments, game cases warped, instruction manuals torn, cartridges with names half faded. The place was frozen in time, like someone had pressed pause decades ago and never came back. A banner still hung above the checkout counter. Midnight tournament. Bring your best. It fluttered once in the still air. The man moved carefully, eyes scanning the aisles. His fingers brushed across the edge of a cracked glass cabinet, past a faded ad for the Power Glove, now soaked in mold. Everything felt too quiet. And then Ichigo stopped. Ears forward, head low. The man followed his gaze. At the back of the store where the arcade cabinets once stood, a soft blue light pulsed behind the prize counter. A mirror. Tall, clean, unbroken, just like the others. But this one, it whispered, not with sound, with feeling. The man stepped forward slowly, one hand resting on the hilt of his blade. The other slid the folded map from his coat pocket, thumb tracing over the name now burned into his thoughts. Elthar's Reach. Maybe it was on the other side, or maybe this was a trap. He glanced at Ichigo. The Shiba was already sitting, waiting, trusting. Even powerless, he was ready. The man let out a slow breath, then took another step toward the glass. Chapter 2. Memory Weight. The mirror waited. It pulsed faintly, a rectangle of soft blue hanging in the dark like a frozen breath. No frame, no anchor, just a doorway to somewhere else, or to nowhere. The man didn't move. He stood 5 feet from the glass, sword hanging at his side, its edge dulled. The static that once danced along the metal had faded. His shield, Lionheart, clipped to his back, felt heavier now. Dead weight, no glow, no hum, just old steel. Ichigo sat beside him, silent, no shimmer in his paws, no trace of redline, just a dog, and a man, and a mirror. He exhaled slowly, breath misting in the stale air. We've gone through worse, he told himself, but even that thought tasted like a lie, because he remembered. He remembered the Troll Brothers, the courtyard exploding with glitch fire, the raw force of those two giants, fists like wrecking balls, grins stitched in corrupted bone. The first one screaming as the shield took his neck. The second howling in rage, near unstoppable. He remembered how close they'd come to losing, how Ichigo's last burst of power had been just enough. He remembered bleeding. He remembered not knowing if they'd wake up again. His grip tightened around the sword. He remembered the winged beast on the highway, a sky fractured with lightning and static haze. That thing, half vulture, half corrupted mech, tearing through broken signs and dragging the man across asphalt as sparks lit the sky. Its scream. That moment when Ichigo had blinked midair and tackled it into a roadside power box. But that had cost them everything. Drained every reserve. He remembered the giant centipede, the one in the ruins of Oldnet. Chitinous plates clicking like corrupted keys, eyes like scanner lenses, teeth like printer heads chewing code. It had wrapped itself around the remains of a cable tower. He could still feel the heat on his back from where it vomited lines of glitched fire across the scaffolding. So many battles. And now, nothing. No powers, no charge in the sword, no fire in Ichigo. Just this mirror. And the quiet whispering thought, what if this is the one we don't come back from? He didn't speak, but he heard himself anyway. We're not ready. Ichigo looked up at him. No glow in his eyes, just trust, as if to say, we never were. Doesn't mean we didn't make it. The man blinked, his throat burned. Right, he whispered. And still, the mirror pulsed, one beat, like a countdown. Not a demand, a summon. He reached back, unclipped the shield. Not because he thought it would protect him, but because it was part of him now. A memory made metal. He looked once more at Ichigo. The little dog stood, no power, no enhancements, just teeth and instinct. But he stood. Together, they turned to the glass. No guarantees, no second lives, only forward. And the mirror swallowed them whole. Chapter 3. The Corridor. There was no sound, no wind, no gravity, no time, only black. The kind of black that felt alive, not empty, but waiting. It swallowed noise and thought alike, thick as ink and twice as cruel. The man moved through it one step at a time, boots somehow crunching against a surface he couldn't see. It didn't echo. It didn't even respond. And then he saw it. Far down a long, impossibly narrow corridor, a single shape floating on a pedestal. A power-up, but not like the others. Not green, not blue, not orange or flickering white, purple. And not the kind found in old games. Not the neon purple of arcade lights. This one pulsed deep, like bruised bone, like poison, like something that should never be touched. It glitched in and out, twitched like static having a seizure, split apart and reformed with jittery hesitation as if unsure whether it wanted to exist at all. The man froze halfway down the corridor. Even Ichigo, fearless, fireless, stopped walking. They both stared. The pedestal was bone white. The base of it curved in strange, unnatural angles, like it had been melted and resculpted mid-scream. The floating power-up spun slowly. A sphere, maybe? No edges, no handle, just gravity and menace, hovering in place. For a moment the man swore he could hear something, a faint digital whisper. Not words, but the feeling of them. Come closer, pick me, become what you must. His hand itched toward his sword. Then stopped. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He felt it in his gut. This wasn't a gift. It was a question, a dare, and maybe a curse. Ichigo growled, soft, almost uncertain. The sound barely escaped his throat. The man took a step back. They didn't touch it. Not yet. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the glitch is the thing that waits to be wanted. Chapter 4. The Weight of Becoming Rum. He stood there for a long time. Long enough that time itself began to feel like another corrupted file. Stretched, bent, out of sync with his breath. The purple power-up floated ahead, a sphere of writhing energy that flickered and glitched like a dying star. It hovered above a bone-white pedestal that twisted in ways geometry shouldn't allow. No sound, no hum, just pressure, like the air itself was holding its breath. The man didn't move. Something in his bones warned him. This was not a gift. This wasn't like the fire dash or lightning pulse. This wasn't a tool to help him survive. This was something else, older, hungrier. He stared at it, jaw clenched tight. His sword hung at his side, dull now, lifeless metal. His shield clipped to his back like a memory he didn't ask to carry. Ichigo stood beside him, just as still. No glow, no sparks, the dog, quiet and watching. The silence between them said more than words ever could, and beneath it all, the man felt the weight of fear. Not panic, not terror, something colder, deeper. The fear of knowing what's coming and realizing you're not ready for any of it. That mirror. That damn mirror. He'd seen them through it. The army. A storm of living corruption marching beneath a blood-colored sky. Trolls with blade limbs, ghost horses dragging twisted riders, lizard beasts that clicked with machine code teeth. Thousands of them. Maybe more. An army too large to stop. And behind them, the outline of something colossal. Something watching, waiting. The glitch master. He swallowed hard, but the lump stayed in his throat. For a second, just one, he let himself feel it. Doubt. He thought of the troll brothers and how close they came to dying. One crushed by the shield, the other enraged beyond reason. He remembered the winged beast on the highway, how it dragged him across shattered glass and bit into his shoulder. He remembered the centipede, screeching in fire and static, wrapping around Ichigo's legs like a living wire. They had survived, but just barely. And now, they stood here, powerless. His sword had no charge. His shield was just metal. And Ichigo, once pulsing with elemental fury, had become quiet, slower, like the power had drained from his very soul. What were they now? He wasn't a hero. He never wanted to be. He was just a man who'd walked into the wrong nightmare and kept moving because stopping meant death. But this power-up, it didn't feel like salvation. It felt like surrender. The orb pulsed again. Deep purple light flickered across the corridor. His shadow warped along the walls, stretching in unnatural shapes, like something trying to climb out of him. He heard something then. Not sound, memory. Pick me. The whisper wasn't external. It was inside. A thought not his own. A voice made of rotten static. The kind of voice you hear in dreams but remember only after you've already obeyed. Let go. He stepped back, 1 foot, slow. Ichigo didn't growl, didn't move. The man looked at him. The Shiba Inu's ears were half back, tail low, but he stood firm. He didn't understand the danger. Or maybe he did, and he trusted the man to make the right choice. The man clenched his jaw again. He wanted to survive, but he didn't want to become something else just to do it. Not like this. He turned away, not fast, not panicked, just decided. Because sometimes real courage isn't found in violence or vengeance. Sometimes it's just the strength to say no, even when the world is begging you to break. And so they left the purple power-up behind, pulsing in the dark like a wound that hadn't yet decided whether to heal or infect. They walked forward, into more shadow, into more unknown. But they walked together, and they walked with their humanity intact. Chapter 5, The Spiral. The man turned his back to the power-up, but something about it refused to stay behind him. Like gravity worked differently in this corridor, pulling backward instead of down. He walked anyway, boots hitting unseen ground that felt more imagined than real. Every step was a lie his body believed. Ahead, the mirror shimmered like a fading memory. It was smaller than before. He stopped, narrowed his eyes. No, not smaller, shrinking. The way out was vanishing. He ran. Hard. Boots thundered across the black nothing, the corridor stretching like taffy with each stride. Sweat clung to his neck, and his breath grew sharp. But the mirror continued to recede, like it wanted to disappear before he could reach it. Then it happened. A silence. Not the kind that happens when sound dies, but the kind that happens when something important is missing. Ichigo. His ears had adjusted to the quiet of this strange world, and in that quiet, the sound of Ichigo's small paws had always been there. But now they weren't. He spun around, and what he saw snapped his heart in half. Ichigo stood alone, still as stone, just inches from the pedestal. The purple orb pulsed, spiraling in and out of phase, sending ripples through the air like heat above asphalt. The fur along Ichigo's spine bristled, but he didn't growl, didn't bark, didn't blink. He was mesmerized, drawn. "No!" the man whispered. Then he shouted, "Ichigo, no!" The words echoed strangely in the corridor, warping as if they were being chewed up by some invisible machine. Ichigo didn't move. The man broke into a sprint, full speed, legs pumping, lungs igniting. He charged toward his companion like a soldier storming a collapsing battlefield. "Get back! Don't touch it! Damn it, listen to me!" He reached him, threw himself forward, grabbed the dog's body with both arms, and twisted away from the pedestal. But his foot caught on nothing. There was no ground, only weightlessness. They fell, and then it happened. Detonation. Not sound. Event. The purple orb exploded in a storm of cosmic violence, a shockwave of static-infused hellfire, as if some ancient processor had reached critical overload and ripped open a dimension between code and godhood. A sphere of crackling violet burst outward, bending the world like a cassette tape, melting in fast forward. The man screamed, but the sound was devoured. He and Ichigo spun through air that wasn't air. Not heat, not wind, not space. A twisting vortex of lightless color and shattering force. The pedestal disintegrated. Symbols like corrupted runes sprayed across the corridor walls before melting mid-glitch. Then he lost grip. Ichigo slipped from his arms. The man reached, fingers stretched, too slow. He watched helpless as his companion began to float. Not fall, not fly. Float. The purple energy wasn't just erupting now. It was possessing. Spiraling tendrils of living static wrapped around Ichigo's legs, chest, muzzle, like a serpent of lightning sinking fangs into a soul. The dog's body lifted higher, paws limp, eyes wide and glowing like twin purple suns. Then came the pulse, one singular blast of visual force. The man's vision fractured. His own body jerked like a puppet, arms seizing as the spiral turned on him. The energy slammed into his chest, a punch from a forgotten god, and knocked him back through a barrier of non-reality. He screamed again, but this time it was internal. The kind of scream no one hears because it happens inside your bones. He was no longer falling. He was fused to the storm. He could see inside the power now. Circuits and veins and time and fear. Code etched like scars across his vision. Letters from languages long dead flashing through his brain like commands he hadn't asked for. Accept, evolve, rewrite. His shield ripped from his back. His sword lifted on its own, twitching in the air as if testing its new weight. But he wasn't holding it. He wasn't in control. He was inside the transformation. And then it happened. Everything went white. Not light, not blankness, but purge. A digital scream full of billions of broken pixels crying out as the new energy ripped through every thread of who he was. And then silence. Real this time. Dark, still. Chapter 6. The Day That Wasn't Warmth. That's what hit him first. Soft sunlight filtered through the canopy above, golden shafts dancing through leaves that rustled with an early breeze. Birds chirped, the kind of chirping that sounded like innocence, like time before the world turned synthetic. The man stirred, his back pressed against damp earth and moss. He blinked once, then again, as if wiping sleep off his vision. Everything was too sharp, too real. He sat up slowly. Ichigo lay beside him, unmoving but breathing, tail lightly twitching as if caught in a dream. The air smelled like pine and distant rain. The forest was alive, not glitching or humming, just normal. For the first time in what felt like weeks, there was no static buzz, no corrupted skies, just calm. The man took a breath, then another. Then he stood. The ground felt solid, stable. He ran a hand across his jacket, brushing dirt and twigs away. It felt good to move again, to be clean, to exist without threat. But then the ground trembled. He paused, head tilted, a second tremble, then a low, distant boom, then another, then a sound like thunder but deeper, sharper, vocal, a chant, far off but growing closer. Reset. The man's mouth went dry. He turned toward the horizon. A wall of dust surged through the trees, shadows behind it, towering figures, shapes out of nightmares. The birds fled in a panicked swarm. The sunlight dimmed, and then he saw them. The army, the same one from the mirror, only now it was real. Trolls with cables for spines and fire for eyes. Horses with skeletal faces and data cables dragging like entrails. Flying machines that were once birds, now warped metal with twitching wings. All of them marching in perfect rhythm, chanting that terrible mantra, reset, reformat, replace. The sky bled crimson. The grass beneath his feet turned gray, then black, then peeled away entirely, revealing dead circuitry buried in the soil. The trees twisted into glitchy towers of wire and glass. The ground cracked. The world died. He looked at Ichigo, still unmoving. "Wake up," he whispered. Another tremor. He screamed it this time. "Wake up!" The forest howled with the arrival of corruption. It was at the tree line now, inches away. He grabbed Ichigo and held him tight as the wave of death surged, and then he blinked, and the world was gone. Darkness again. Not the forest. Not the real world. Just the mirror room. Just that corridor. Just the silence. He was lying on the cold surface again. A thin ring of purple static buzzed softly around him, then faded into nothing. He pushed himself upright with shaking hands. His chest heaved. Sweat dripped from his forehead. There was no army, no sun, only the pedestal, now shattered. And where the orb once floated, there was nothing but a clear glass shell, empty and dull. He looked down at his hands, then his arms. Veins, once human, now pulsed with an unnatural violet hue. Thin lines of circuitry spidered across his skin like something half machine, half magic. They shimmered faintly under his flesh, like they'd always been there, just waiting to awaken. The pulse in his neck throbbed. Not with fear, with something darker. He turned his head and saw Ichigo, or what was once Ichigo. A silhouette stood in the settling dust, the same place Ichigo had been. But this figure was enormous, at least 5 times larger, hulking. Massive shoulders heaved as it breathed. Its form warped the air around it, shadow layered over shadow. The light behind it flickered as if afraid to touch it. There was no tail, no perked ears, no familiar body. What stood there now was not a dog. A low growl rumbled across the black floor. It wasn't canine. It wasn't natural. It was the sound of something ancient, something untamed. A growl so deep it seemed to vibrate within the man's chest and spine. A sound that made the world feel smaller. The dust thinned. The man's breath caught. The creature stepped forward. 1 foot emerged from the haze, a monstrous paw lined with jagged claws that sparked with glitch energy. The floor beneath it cracked. The man stepped back. His hand found the hilt of his sword. Eyes wide, chest rising fast. "Ichigo?" he whispered, and the growl only deepened. Chapter 7. The thing that wears his name, silence. That's what surrounded the man after the dust settled. A silence so thick it pressed into his ears like static under pressure. His hand remained wrapped around the hilt of his sword, knuckles white, breath shallow. He didn't blink, because he couldn't, because what stood before him, half shrouded in smoke, outlined by fractured light, wasn't his Shiba Inu. It was something else. The growl came again, low and dragging across the room like iron chains scraping concrete. It didn't just sound, it vibrated. The air shimmered. not from heat, but from presence, a wrongness that curled into his skin like static before a lightning strike. The dust cleared more, and the man finally saw it. It was massive, the size of a lion, with a frame that looked forged from nightmare and machine. Its body was thick with corded muscle beneath fur blacker than void, so dark it made the surrounding shadows look gray. What used to be soft brown Shiba Inu fur was now charred pitch, jagged in patches, spiked in others, but it was the neck and spine that arrested him. From just below the ears to the base of the tail, deep purple spikes jutted out from beneath the fur, irregular and pulsing faintly like they were alive. Each one glitched slightly in place, flickering between states like corrupted data forced into reality. The tail, once curled like a question mark, like a proper Shiba, now hung low and straight like a wolf's, swaying as if sensing the man's hesitation. Licks of black and violet fire curled from it, weightless and slow, like underwater flames. The creature's paws were enormous, still shaped like a dog's, but wrapped in bands of black and purple that coursed with static electricity. With every step, they thudded against the mirror floor, leaving behind faint singe marks that pulsed and faded. And then the man met its eyes, two solid spheres of glowing violet, no pupils, no whites, just endless, depthless power. Eyes that did not blink, eyes that did not recognize. A flicker of memory surged through the man's chest. Ichigo, tail wagging, running through puddles. Ichigo curled beside him on a broken mattress. Ichigo leaping toward him after a battle, tongue out, eyes wide, alive, gone. Now only this. The man didn't move. His legs wanted to. Everything in his mind screamed to run, to hide, to do something. But the sword stayed at his side. His feet didn't budge. The hellhound's breath echoed through the room, not panting, pulsing. Each exhale distorted the air around it like a fan warping smoke. And from its chest deep inside came something new, a bark. But it wasn't a bark. It was a weapon. The moment it erupted, the room seemed to collapse in on itself. The bark shattered the silence like a bomb, launching sound waves that cracked the mirror walls and sent a jolt through the man's chest, forcing him back 2 steps. He gasped. His sword nearly slipped from his grip. Dust fell from the ceiling. The air sparked with raw data flickers. Then the creature stepped closer, its flame mane now fully visible, encircling its head and shoulders in a crown of deep violet hellfire. It moved like a predator, quiet, intentional. Each step a slow, deliberate echo in the glitch world. The man looked into those glowing eyes, and he saw nothing. No warmth, no joy, no memory. He raised his sword slightly, not to strike but to block, to hold it between them like a shield of memory, a reminder of what once was. And then he spoke, quiet, shaking, barely a whisper. Ichigo? The hellhound twitched, paused, its ears flicked slightly. The growl softened just for a breath, and for a single second, the man thought he saw it, a flicker, a hesitation, the shadow of his friend. He stepped forward, swallowing the knot in his throat. Are you still in there? The creature's flame pulsed, slow and steady, but it didn't answer. Not yet. Chapter 8. Echoes of fire. The walls were burning, not melting, not glitching, burning. The hellhound's bark had ripped through the chamber like a bomb in a cathedral, and now violet flame licked its way up ancient stone columns that hadn't seen fire in 1,000 years. The blaze wasn't natural. It danced too slow, flickered too cold. Black and purple tendrils wove through the fire like veins in corrupted glass, casting long shadows that moved just a beat out of sync with the light. The man stared, unmoving. One foot slid back into a guarded stance, sword gripped low at his side. His breath fogged in front of him despite the heat. His eyes stayed locked on the monster circling him. No, not a monster, not entirely Ichigo, or the shell of him, or something wearing his shape. They moved slowly, each circling the cracked chamber floor, separated by no more than 15 paces, but a universe of uncertainty. Each step the hellhound took was measured, predatory, not to provoke but to understand. Its claws clicked on the ancient stone with a rhythmic cadence. Its body twitched, adjusting for angles, positioning, calculating like a war-born animal. The man matched the pace, uncertain. He wasn't sure what had changed inside him, only that something had. The purple energy still coiled in his veins like wire, humming beneath the surface. He could feel it, alive, dormant for now, but watching. He was a man carrying a storm in his bloodstream, and even he didn't know what would happen if he let it go. The fire behind them pulsed. The walls were no longer glass or mirror. They were stone, not concrete or data formed, real, carved with symbols he couldn't read, layered with age and moss, sigils of suns and moons, of leaf and claw, elven, maybe, or something older. This wasn't a glitch chamber. It was a ruin, and it had been waiting. The hellhound's tail swung once, a black, barbed whip of flame. It stepped left. So did the man. They were mirroring each other now, two animals in the arena of fate. The man's chest rose slowly with every breath. He kept his eyes fixed on the creature's shoulders, watching for the twitch, the giveaway, the shift before the strike. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want to believe what was standing across from him was his dog. But he had to face the possibility that Ichigo, his Ichigo, had burned away with that last blast of purple power. This thing, this hellhound, might be what was left. The man licked his dry lips, voice barely audible. If you're still in there, I need a sign. The hellhound didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. Its lips curled slightly, revealing a row of jagged ivory knives slick with heat. The air around its face rippled. The flames in its mane flared. Still no sign, still no answer. They circled once more. In the silence, the man could hear something beyond the walls, a distant chime, like wind brushing through hollowed-out trees. The sound of a dead forest remembering it was once alive. He kept his sword low, ready, but not raised. A single flick of the tail, a low growl. The hellhound lowered its stance, front paws spread slightly, muscles coiled like springs. It was preparing. The man froze. If it lunged, he'd have to react. If it pounced, he'd be forced to test this new power in his blood, a power he didn't understand, didn't trust, didn't even want. His mind raced, planning counters, evasions, guesses. But his heart cracked at the thought of drawing blood from something that had once licked his face during quiet mornings and slept curled against his chest in motel beds under flickering lights. He didn't want to strike. He didn't want to run. He just wanted to reach him. But what if there was nothing left to reach? What if the purple fire had burned away his best friend? The growl deepened. The man's grip on the sword tightened, his body tense, his feet planted. He wouldn't cry. He wouldn't plead. But before he did anything else, his voice broke through the stillness, low and shaking with sorrow. Are you still in there, Ichigo? The hellhound froze. Its flame pulsed once, then twice. And the room went still as death. Chapter 9, Tricks of the Heart. The flames had died to embers. The stone walls, still charred, glowed with residual heat. The hellhound, massive, fanged, cloaked in flickering black and purple, stood statue still across from the man. The man didn't move. He hadn't moved in minutes, because he didn't know how. One wrong move might trigger the monster inside his once best friend. One sudden gesture could mean he'd be forced to defend himself against Ichigo. But he had to try. He had to do something, so he took a slow, quiet breath and reached out his hand. Hey, buddy, he said gently, his voice rough. It's me. His fingertips inched forward, palm open. The hellhound growled. Not a warning, a threat. The man froze. The growl was low, primal, a jagged vibration that buzzed up through the floor and into his bones. The teeth that once gently pulled socks from the laundry now glinted like white daggers. He pulled his hand back. Okay, not ready. His eyes scanned the beast's face, desperate for recognition. The flicker of memory, a tilt of the head. Anything. Nothing. He searched for another way in. Then a whisper from the past. The duck. His eyes widened. The duck, he said aloud. Your squeaky duck. He dug into his coat, found the small plush, half-melted, scorched from a previous battle, but intact. He held it up. Ichigo had once gone wild for the thing, tossing it in the air, catching it mid-squeak, then strutting around like he'd slain a beast of legend. The hellhound didn't blink. No wag, no ear twitch. The duck meant nothing now. The man's heart sank, but he wasn't done. Not yet. Another memory struck, sharp and clear. Tricks. Ichigo had loved showing off. He'd do the whole list in seconds for a crumb of beef jerky, even when tired, even when sick. The man reached slowly into the inner pocket of his jacket. His fingers closed around it, one last treat forgotten until now. He pulled it out and held it in front of him. One breath, two, sit. Silence. The man didn't blink. The hellhound's ears twitched. Then, like a lever being pulled by some ancient instinct, it sat. Massive hindquarters thudded to the floor like a felled boulder. The man flinched. Holy crap! He blinked fast, his brain scrambling to catch up. It obeyed. He said again, barely breathing. Paw! The creature lifted one massive flame-wreathed paw, talons clacking as it hovered in front of him. The man reached out with shaking fingers and tapped it. It didn't pull away. It didn't strike. It just waited. Good, he whispered. Good boy. Now the momentum was with him. Shake! The hellhound's paw shifted slightly, repeating the motion. Lay down. A deep guttural growl echoed as the beast slowly dropped to the ground, its violet eyes never leaving the man's face. The sword dropped from the man's hand. He was shaking. Roll over. With a rumble that shook the soot from the ceiling, the hellhound turned over once, its massive frame somehow smooth in motion despite the weight and size. The man couldn't believe it. He was getting through. His breath caught in his throat, hope swelling. So when he spoke next, it wasn't deliberate. It wasn't even conscious. It was habit. Speak! He realized the mistake too late. The second the word left his mouth, the room cracked open. The hellhound reared back its head, jaws open wide, and unleashed a bark, a roar, a sonic hell scream that shattered the air like a war horn from a forgotten god. The man barely had time to raise his arms before the sound hit him like a freight train. It threw him backward, hurling his body like a rag doll across the stone chamber. He slammed into the wall with a deafening thud, the Lionheart shield taking the brunt of the impact as it clanged like a struck bell. His vision blurred, ears ringing, chest heaving. He lay there, pinned to the wall for a second, processing nothing. Then he laughed. Just once, a breathless, broken laugh that bordered on madness. He coughed, spat dust, and looked up at the enormous creature now staring at him. Good, he wheezed, half-grin forming despite the pain. My pup's still in there. Chapter 10, Through the Ember Gate. The echo of that otherworldly bark still trembled in the stone, but the room had gone silent. The man stood slowly, one arm pressed against the wall for balance. His knees ached, his shoulder throbbed, but he was alive, and Ichigo was still sitting where he'd rolled over, tongue lolling lazily out of a mouth lined with nightmarish teeth. Still massive, still cloaked in violet fire, but different. Tame wasn't the word. That would have meant control. This was something else. The hellhound, Ichigo, cocked his head to the side, ears twitching like a confused pup. The violet glow of his eyes had softened. His breathing had slowed. That terrible posture, all muscle and menace, had shifted into something looser, less coiled. He looked, curious. The man pulled out the last remaining treat and took a slow step forward. You earned this one, bud, he whispered. Ichigo didn't growl, didn't rear, didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned down and gently took the treat with a huge embered tongue that singed the air, but didn't burn the man's hand. His fingers brushed Ichigo's mane. The purple flames licked at his skin like waves of static, warm, not hot. Comforting, even. The beast nuzzled his palm, still in there, still fighting. The man knelt beside him and rubbed the side of his neck, careful of the protruding purple spikes that jutted out like horns. They crackled softly, each one pulsing with a rhythm that matched Ichigo's breath. That's when the man noticed the hallway. The mirror that once shimmered at the edge of the room was gone, replaced by a solid door, ancient and carved, pulsing faintly with green and purple light. It didn't hum like technology. It breathed like something alive. He stood and walked toward it, Ichigo trailing behind like a shadow stitched in static. As he neared, he caught a glint of metal, his own reflection flashing in the burnished surface of the door. Except it wasn't quite him. He looked down. His sword. It wasn't the one he'd brought from home, the dulled green blade scavenged in an old blockbuster, chipped and worn. This one gleamed with gold beneath dancing violet fire. It was no longer curved. It had become a long, straight blade, balanced and deadly, forged with precision and purpose. The hilt had shifted too, wrapped in dark leather, carved with glowing runes he didn't recognize. He turned it in his hand. It was lighter than it looked, alive in his grip. A gift, maybe, or a warning. Then he saw the shield. It was larger than before, the once proud lion's head still etched into the center, but now twisted, reshaped. No longer feline. Now, a hellhound's face snarled from the metal, snarled with pride, not rage. Its teeth flared outward in sharp relief. The outer ring of the shield, once rounded and smooth, had become jagged, like shards of broken mirrors reforged in fire. He clipped it to his back and exhaled. Then, slowly, he turned his wrist to inspect his own reflection in the polished edge. What he saw wasn't terrifying. But it wasn't human either. His eyes were no longer blue. They burned with a soft pastel violet, flickering with faint pulses of glitch light. Not cold, just changed. His skin was pale, but the veins beneath glowed faintly, like wires fed by deep energy. He flexed his fingers. Pain flared up his arms, not sharp, more like the heat after you hold your hands too long over a campfire. A warning, not a punishment. He closed his fists, feeling the weight of power that now hummed beneath his skin. He was changing. So was Ichigo. And whatever was behind that door, whatever came next, wasn't going to wait. He took one slow step toward the door. The flame-lit corridor behind him whispered as Ichigo followed. Together, they stood before the gate of what could only be another test. And without speaking, they both knew there was no turning back. Chapter 11. Armored for War. The golden door creaked open on hinges that made no sound. What lay beyond could not be real. But here, in this world stitched together by old codes and forgotten magic, reality no longer held dominion. The chamber was gold. Not just adorned in it, it was gold. The walls shimmered with molten radiance, casting overlapping reflections of the man and the beast that walked beside him. The floor rippled like liquid sunlight, solid underfoot, but somehow alive. Even the ceiling, domed and massive, glowed like a second sun hung from unseen chains. In the center of the room stood a chest. It was enormous, carved with intricate patterns of circuitry and ancient elvish runes, intertwined like roots of a tree grown from both nature and nightmare. Black metal rings reinforced its edges, and a single lock pulsed with a low heartbeat of violet light. The man approached, breath caught somewhere between awe and reverence. He touched the latch. It clicked. The lid rose slowly, splitting the light like a blade. Inside was power. First he saw armor. Not for him, for Ichigo. A full set, custom-shaped, with plates that curved like muscle and shimmered with layered shades of deep purple and bright orange. The pieces were etched with fire patterns and glitch sigils, like corrupted runes carved by flame. Along the back, open slots were cut to allow for the hellhound's jagged, spike-like fur to flare through without obstruction. And beneath it, coiled into a massive saddle with reinforced clamps and glowing buckles, was a riding harness. Ornate, deadly, with its own rows of armored teeth carved into the leather like something out of a forgotten prophecy. The man stepped back in awe as Ichigo stepped forward, as if drawn by something ancient and coded into his blood. The hellhound didn't growl, didn't hesitate. He lowered his body to the ground, inviting, ready. Together they fitted the armor. It clanked, it pulsed, it fit. The saddle latched perfectly, each spike slot aligning as if it had been waiting for this moment. The hellhound's eyes glowed brighter. His stance changed. He was no longer just a creature of corrupted power. He was a weapon, a knight's mount for the new digital war. And at the bottom of the chest, buried under folds of heavy cloth and layers of ancient dust, the man saw it, a sword, not his own, Ichigo's. It was massive, longer than any blade he had ever seen wielded by a creature on 4 legs. But it hummed with weightless force, carved from obsidian-like black metal but flared with glowing orange veins, the same orange that pulsed through Ichigo's new armor. It radiated heat. It radiated purpose. He reached out, just brushing the handle, and it snapped to Ichigo's side as if magnetized. A perfect fit. The man stood in silence. He should have felt joy, relief, readiness. But instead, he felt something else, darkness. Something inside him shifted. It wasn't the same kind of fear that had haunted him since the glitch storm began. No, this was fury, primal, cold. He saw flashes in his mind, the glitch master, towering and untouchable, laughing as corrupted creatures tore through cities. He saw those eyes, that voice. Replace, reset, reformat. The man gritted his teeth. It wasn't enough to win. He wanted to hurt him. He wanted to tear the glitch master's body apart, to break him, to kill him. He didn't want justice. He wanted vengeance. The shield on his back pulsed with the same energy, no longer glowing with the proud line of courage, but the hellhound's snarl of wrath. The edges were jagged now, sharp enough to cut flesh on contact. The sword at his side burned hotter. His own veins flared visibly beneath his skin, purple and alien. He looked down at his hands. They trembled slightly, not from fear, but from too much power aching for release. "I don't know what I've become," he whispered, his voice distant. Ichigo let out a low growl, not in warning, but agreement. They stood together, Man and monster, hero and beast, warrior and weapon. And as the door behind them slowly rumbled shut, sealing them inside the golden room, one thought surged through the man's mind like wildfire. "We're coming for you, Glitchmaster." He flexed his fingers again. The warmth in his hands hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown more intense, not burning, but lingering, like holding them over a campfire too long. A pulsing ache that wasn't pain, just pressure, like something wanted out. He stepped away from the chest and held his arms out in front of him. "Come on, what did you give me?" he muttered to the golden room, to the mirror, to the code itself. Nothing. He flicked his fingers. Nothing. He clenched his fists, imagined blades shooting from his arms. Nothing. He snapped, thrust, spun, punched, even mimicked a cheesy Hadouken. Nothing. Ichigo, now fully armored and towering beside him, let out a slow huff through his jagged jaws. If the beast could roll his eyes, he probably would have. The man sighed. "Guess I'm still figuring this out." Then he tried something different. He stopped trying. He let the pressure build. Let the warmth collect in his chest and flow outward, down his left arm, where it throbbed behind the skin like a second heartbeat. He closed his left fist and opened it slowly. A pulse of deep purple flickered between his fingers. Tiny at first, like a spark, but it grew, shifted, took shape. A slow swirl of black and purple fire began to form in his palm, unnatural, twisting like smoke underwater. The flame hissed, glitching at the edges, jagged static warping around its core. It didn't flicker like normal fire. It glitched, vibrated, shifted between frames that shouldn't exist. It looked alive, hungry. He aimed it at the far wall and released. The orb of corrupted flame shot forward with a loud, low-pitched boom, cracking the silence like thunder in reverse. It slammed into the gold wall and exploded in a blossom of purple and black light, sending shards of digital dust cascading into the air. The recoil rocked him backward a step. The wall was scorched, not with heat but with distortion. As if reality itself had been bruised where the fireball struck, Ichigo stepped back, growling softly, not in fear but recognition. The man stared at his hand. Smoke curled from his palm. What the hell was that? He clenched his fist again and felt the fire pulse once more. This wasn't magic. It wasn't technology. It was something older, something worse. And it was his now. He looked at Ichigo, now fitted with armor sharp enough to cleave steel, his sword nearly as tall as a man, the purple flames crackling off his mane. The man turned back to the golden room, still echoing with the blast. His left hand glowed faintly. His right hand gripped the sword. Whatever world waited outside this chamber, whatever monstrosities the Glitchmaster had bred for war, they were ready. Together. The blast mark still simmered on the golden wall. He stared at it too long. Not because he was shocked, but because he wasn't. He liked the feeling. That pulse of control. That rush of destruction. That sense that, with just a thought, he could beckon the world to his will. He looked down at his left hand again. It wasn't twitching anymore. It was still. Calm, but the energy was there, humming beneath the surface like a coiled beast waiting to strike. The man walked slowly to the center of the room and sat. Ichigo watched him silently, armored head tilted, eyes glowing embers of violet. For a moment, he let himself slip. What if this power wasn't just a curse or a gift? What if it was a solution? He thought about home, not just his apartment or the quiet streets he used to walk with Ichigo before all of this. He thought about the world, the real world, the war zones, the bombings, the sick kids in collapsing hospitals, the corrupt politicians fattened on lies, the street thugs who laughed when people begged for their lives, the monsters not born from code but from choice. What if he could end it? All of it. He could walk into a room of warlords and end them with a gesture. Burn through empires built on pain. No jury, no laws, just judgment. He felt his jaw tighten. Maybe that was his real mission. Maybe this wasn't about glitches or fake monsters. Maybe this was about cleansing everything. He looked at Ichigo. The beast didn't move. But something in his stare shifted. The man blinked. Suddenly he was aware of the sweat on his brow, the chill in his chest, the tremble in his fingers. He'd gone too far. He exhaled, long and slow, grounding himself. No, not that way. He wasn't the Glitchmaster. He wouldn't become him. This power didn't make him a god. It made him a soldier, a protector. He rose to his feet, slow and deliberate, feeling the new weight of the sword on his hip and the warmth of the fire in his blood. He was no longer the coward who clutched a thermos on the sidewalk, wondering what was wrong with the sky. He was the one who stared back at monsters. And now it was time to hunt one. He looked to Ichigo. Let's go. Chapter 12, The Reflection. They were ready. The sword pulsed with coiled flame. The shield's jagged rim gleamed with menace. Ichigo stood beside him like a demon reborn, armor fitted, mane flaring purple with quiet power. But the room, the golden sanctum that had revealed so much, offered no exit, no path forward. The man turned in a full circle, scanning every corner, every shimmering panel, every carved etching in the walls. Nothing opened, nothing beckoned, only silence, until, "There," he whispered. Back in the previous chamber, the one they had nearly died in, a new light shimmered. No, not new. Old, a mirror. Had it been there before? The man stepped forward, Ichigo following without a sound, paws heavy on the stone floor. They reached the threshold, and the man's breath caught in his throat. Through the mirror they saw it. The woods. Green, alive. Not corrupted. No rain, no static in the trees, no glitchlings. Just a simple breeze rustling clean leaves, the hum of summer bugs, a peaceful world untouched by the static war. But that wasn't what chilled him. It was the reflection. In the mirror they were just a man and his Shiba Inu. No sword, no armor, no flaming mane, no purple fire in his veins. Just jeans, a jacket, a leash, just them. Before everything broke, before power, before pain. The man's lips parted, his hand twitched by the hilt of his sword. "What happens if we go through?" He whispered, mostly to himself. "Do we lose it all?" He stared into the eyes of his former self, simple, small, afraid, and wondered if that man had been stronger after all. Back then, when he ran toward danger with nothing but hope and a dog by his side. Ichigo let out a soft growl, not of anger but alertness. He, too, seemed wary. The man reached out a hand toward the glass. It shimmered, pulsed faintly, inviting. But was it freedom or a trap? He withdrew his hand and clenched it into a fist. There were no answers in the glass, only decisions. Chapter 13, The Golden Guard. A low grinding sound echoed through the golden chamber, stone sliding against stone. The man spun around, sword half drawn. Ichigo growled, armor clinking as his stance widened. From the far wall, once seamless and whole, a section split open, a hidden door revealing a shadowed corridor behind it. Dust rolled out, catching the golden light in thick clouds. A figure emerged, tall, lean, armored in polished gold and emerald. His helm bore a crown of twisted silver, and his boots struck the floor with a weight that felt ancient. His face, when revealed, was sharp and angular, elven unmistakably, skin pale as sun-washed bone, eyes glowing faintly green. He drew his blade, its edge humming softly like a tuning fork lost in time. "Who trespasses in the hall of Valerion?" he demanded, voice like steel wrapped in silk. The man froze. The elf's tongue shifted mid-sentence, flowing into a dialect older, more melodic, yet laced with fury. "Tura and Templa, Viereth Minle, Thuramin!" He raised a horn from his belt and blew a piercing note. The sound tore through the silence like a blade. Footsteps, dozens of them, echoed behind him. Armor clattering, voices shouting in the same elven tongue. "He just called the cavalry," the man muttered. Ichigo stepped forward, hackles raised, fangs bared. His mane glowed, pulsing with violet flame, smoke curling off his spine. The elf paused, eyes narrowing. "This is no beast of our realm," he whispered. "What sorcery walks with you?" The man looked down at his own reflection in his shield, eyes pastel purple, veins glowing faintly. He gripped the hilt tighter. He could flee, try the mirror, hope it didn't reset everything. But deep in his gut he knew, this power wasn't theirs to give up. They'd come too far, sacrificed too much. The man took a slow step forward and squared his stance. "We're not going anywhere," he said. "You want us gone. You'll have to try harder than that." Ichigo let out a low, thunderous growl. The elf's lips curled into something between awe and disdain. "So be it," he whispered. The golden door behind him flared with light. And then they charged. The man didn't hesitate. He spun, grabbed the thick leather saddle along Ichigo's back, and swung himself up in one smooth, desperate motion. "Go!" he shouted. Ichigo launched forward back, his massive paws cracking the golden floor like a war drum. As the guards surged from the corridor, their armor clanging, weapons drawn, Ichigo opened his monstrous jaws and let out a BOOM! The bark wasn't sound. It was force. The blast wave slammed into the soldiers, flinging a dozen of them against the walls and floor like rag dolls. Shields crumpled, helms spun. The the golden corridor shook. Before the smoke cleared, the man aimed his left hand. Foam! A surge of purple-black fire roared from his palm, striking the arched stone door the elven warrior had come through. The flames exploded on impact, shattering the frame, widening the hole. Move, he growled. Ichigo charged through the breach, his claws skidding on polished stone, mane rippling with fire as they entered a new realm. The noise fell behind them, but the golden maze rose ahead. Massive walls of gilded stone twisted into winding paths. Arches looped into dead ends. The air was thick with history, and something else? Magic. Boots thundered behind them. The guards were regrouping, spears clattered, voices shouted orders in Old Elven. The pursuit was real. But the man wasn't listening. Not anymore. He was looking around, heart pounding, not in fear but in recognition. This place, these walls, he knew them. Not from memory, from clues, from a map, from a shield. This was Valor's world, the kingdom where that strange warrior had fallen, where the Lionhead shield had been forged and the NES-style fantasy map had pointed with strange coordinates. That wasn't just ornamentation on the stone. It was legacy. This is it, the man whispered. This is where he came from. Ichigo roared, clearing a fallen column. They turned left, dead end. Right, another corridor. The maze was endless. We need to find it, the man said under his breath, gripping the saddle tighter. Althar's Reach. That's where this leads. He didn't know how he knew that. He just did. The answer, the next chapter, the next war, the next power, it was waiting there. But first, they had to survive the kingdom that didn't want them here. Chapter 14, The Maze Guardian. The maze narrowed. Twisting corridors of gold and obsidian stretched endlessly in unnatural directions. Some tilted, others looped impossibly like code breaking mid-render. The very air pulsed as if the walls themselves were breathing. The man's knuckles whitened around Ichigo's reins. They had been turning left, then right, then retracing. But this wasn't confusion. It was design. A labyrinth meant to keep them lost, to test them. The thought struck him like lightning. This is backwards, he muttered. We're not moving forward. We're going back. Ichigo growled in agreement, his nose twitching. He smelled something up ahead. And then they entered the clearing. A massive circular arena lay carved into the heart of the maze, surrounded by broken pillars and flickering torches wedged into bone-colored sconces. At the center stood a monster. Not a man, not a beast, something in between. The lower half was built like a warhorse, but swollen and grotesque, hooves cracked and steaming, tendons pulsing like thick data cables. The upper body was humanoid but distorted, skin slashed with glitching lines of red and black code, shoulders hunched beneath bone armor. Where a head should be, there was a helmet fused into flesh with horns twisted like corrupted ram sticks. And the eyes, there were no eyes, just a single red light that flickered like an old recording. Back to the start, it muttered in a corrupted voice that echoed twice. The power was not earned. The man tightened his grip on his sword. Ichigo growled beside him, flames licking up his sides. This was no ordinary centaur. This was the Guardian, the one meant to keep them from the Golden Room, the final trial. Only thanks to the mirror they had received the power first, and they'd need every ounce of it. The Guardian reared back, roaring, a sound like a modem dying underwater. Glitched horns extended outward, pixelating briefly, then solidifying into razors. Prepare to be erased, it screamed, and then it charged. The ground trembled, the maze shook, and the battle began. The golden floor cracked under its hooves. Each step thundered like the heartbeat of a dying god. A massive iron axe shimmered in one hand, and a tarnished tower shield in the other, both relics of a bygone war, etched with glowing runes that twitched with corrupted light. The man lifted his golden sword, but it felt heavy, heavier than it should have. He held out his left hand, summoning a swirling core of dark purple energy. Fam! He loosed the fireball. It slammed to the Guardian's shield and fizzled. The centaur didn't even flinch. From the other side, Ichigo leapt, a black and purple blur of snarling flame. His paws cracked the ground as he lunged and opened his jaws. Bark! A monstrous, thunderous wave shook the chamber, but the Guardian spun. Clang! The tower's shield met the bark's force head-on. Ichigo skidded back, stunned. The centaur laughed, a deep, melodic, ancient sound, unsettling in its calmness. Ah, so this is the manner of beast thou would call companion. a hound cloaked in wrath but lacking in soul. And thou, stranger, it turned its gaze toward the man, thou wield the flame of the god forged, yet thy hands tremble. It raised the axe. Why hast thou trespassed upon sacred stone if thou hath already stolen the fire? The man didn't answer. Instead he dashed left, then right, loosing another fireball mid-roll. Miss, it struck the ceiling, sending sparks raining. The guardian was fast, too fast for its size. It thundered forward again, spinning mid-charge, shield first, slamming the man backward into a pillar. Crack! Pain rattled through him. But then came Ichigo. The hellhound barreled low and bit down on the centaur's rear leg, his jaws wrapped in flickering fire. The guardian roared. A fine beast, loyal still. It grunted, stepping forward, dragging Ichigo momentarily. The man scrambled up, breathing hard. His hands glowed again, the veins lit with faint purple, but the energy stuttered as if doubting him. He hurled another fireball, wide. Damn it, he whispered. The centaur didn't press. Instead, it circled, measured, curious. Thy strength is ill-born. Hast thou earned what burns within thee? The gods, if they yet watch, weep. Then it charged again. The man ducked, rolled behind a pillar, then popped out the side and slashed at the beast's hindquarters. A shallow cut. The centaur snarled. Good, there is fight in thee yet. It turned. The axe came down hard. Clang! The Lionheart shield met it, golden edges sparking. They stood locked, man and guardian, in a dead heat. And for the first time, the man's eyes didn't flinch. He pushed back, and the guardian stumbled. Ichigo snarled beside him, ready to rip again. The man held his sword firm. They weren't done. The clash of sword and axe echoed again and again, as if the maze itself were judging their every strike. Ichigo growled low, circling behind the guardian, his flames pulsing with restrained power. But the beast never turned its back to him. It moved with centuries of instinct, aware of every angle. The man braced behind his shield. His arms shook, not from fear, from sheer force. And then the guardian leaned forward, pressing the axe against the shield with crushing weight. Answer me, mortal thief, the centaur growled, its voice like rolling thunder woven through static. Why comest thou here? Why invade a world not thine own? What hast thou taken, and for whom? The man gritted his teeth. We're not working for anyone. Then why dost thou bear the fire of the ancients? The guardian snapped, stepping back suddenly. Thy kind should never wield such flame. We didn't ask for this, the man shouted, rising. We're trying to survive, to fight back. I'm looking for something. The centaur stopped, eyes narrowed, or perhaps the red glow dimmed. Speak it plain. The man tightened his grip on the golden sword. I'm looking for Elthar's keep. There was a pause. Even the torches seemed to dim. And then the centaur laughed. A long, deep, humorless bellow. Elthar's keep? It said, voice echoing off the vaulted chamber. O bold fool, brave, blind soul! Thou seeketh ashes. That keep hath been broken, buried and forgotten for many years. There is naught but ruin. Nothing lives there now, not even hope. The man's face twisted. You're lying. Would that I were, the centaur answered, his tone darker now. But I've walked its shattered halls. I have heard the weeping stones. Elthar's keep fell when the last of the silver guard were turned to corrupted beasts. The man's stomach churned. He had no response, only more questions. And Ichigo, he growled again, louder this time, ready for the fight to resume. Tell me then, the guardian said, lifting his axe, if thy purpose lies in dust, and thy hands are unworthy of the gift thou've stolen, why do thee yet fight? The man raised his blade. Because if there's still even a single chance, even a rumor of hope left, I'll find it. His voice shook, but his stance did not. And I'll burn down every corrupted throne, every glitch-infected lie that stands in the way. The guardian's glowing eye narrowed, and then he charged. Chapter 15, Whispers of the Forgotten Keep. The centaur's hooves struck the golden stone with the thunder of ancient war drums. His axe dragged sparks from the floor. His breath steamed like smoke from a forge. His body, half man, half beast, loomed in the maze's heart like a forgotten god of war. But he did not charge again. Instead, he stood towering, watching. His voice, when it came, was grave and steeped in the age of legends. Thou bearest the flame of the hollow gods. The centaur rumbled, his tone no longer wrathful, but wary. Power stolen from the vault that lies beyond the breath of time. And yet, thou wield it with shaking hands. The man said nothing, catching his breath. Ichigo's molten purple form circled beside him, low and growling, ears back and glowing mane flaring like smoke. "Why hast thou come?" the centaur asked. "To steal more from my charge? To spit upon the bones of the ancients?" "We didn't steal anything," the man said, sword still ready. "We were dragged into this place. That power, whatever it is, it came to us. We didn't ask." The centaur tilted his head, hair braided with golden clasps, bone ornaments shaking. "Thy tongue weaves odd tales. The vault of the old ones does not grant power. It judges. And what it gives, it marks." He stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "I am called Vedros, guardian of the sacred flame. I have stood in this maze since the sundering of the dawn realms, since the day the skies bled fire and the stars sang no more." The man furrowed his brow. "What happened to your world?" Vedros raised his eyes to the dome of the maze, remembering. The sky grew cold, then red, then black, and from beyond the firmament came shadow. He shuddered, not from fear but reverence, not shadow of the moon nor of night, but of something deeper, a crawling rot that moved through stone and spirit alike. It devoured the king's tongue mid-speech, burned the trees from root to crown, unmade the old magics with a whisper. His voice dipped into something darker. It was not a creature, not a god. It was wrongness given form. The priests called it the hollow hunger. The elder scribes called it the reaping curse. But all knew it as death before death. The man gritted his teeth. He knew. The description wasn't exact, but the feel of it, the damage it did, the destruction it left behind, it was the same. The same evil that tore apart his city. The same evil that whispered from every corrupted creature he'd fought. The same evil that called itself Glitchmaster. "I've seen it too," the man muttered. "In my world." Vedros narrowed his eyes, stepping forward. "Thy world?" he echoed, uncertain. "There are other realms beyond this one?" The man nodded slowly. "Yes." Vedros raised his axe, not in challenge, but almost in salute. "Then thine enemy is mine as well." There was silence, only the hiss of Ichigo's quiet growl. The man stared into the centaur's ancient eyes. "I seek Elthar's reach," he said suddenly. Vedros let out a low, rumbling laugh, bitter and deep. "Then thou seekest smoke and ruin." The man's chest tightened. "Elthar's reach hath fallen. Nothing remains but ghosts and sand. The forest swallowed its gates. The flame beneath its keep burned cold long ago. Even the stars forget its name." "But," the man began. Vedros stepped closer again, eyes fierce. "Thou speak as if fate's hand guides thee, and though thy tongue is strange, thy courage rings true." He pointed his axe behind him. A narrow hall of light had opened, golden and faint, barely visible through the haze of battle. "Go, stranger, seek what ashes remain. But know this, should the curse thou speak of rise again, thy fire may not be enough." The man tightened his grip on the sword. Ichigo stood tall beside him. "I won't let it win," the man said. "Not here, not there, not anywhere." Vedros gave one final nod. "Then walk with fire, warrior, and may thy soul not burn before thy quest is done." Chapter 16. The Glow Between the Trees. They had left the maze in silence, guided by the centaur's begrudging words. Half a warning, half a riddle. The path forward wasn't carved in stone, but etched in memory, instinct, and fragments of an ancient map that pulsed faintly with warmth from the man's coat pocket. Now they walked side by side, the man and the hellhound that once had been Ichigo, through a forest both familiar and unrecognizable. The signposts they'd passed, half-eaten by moss and time, read wispwood, but this wasn't the same wood they'd glimpsed before. The air here shimmered. Tiny lights danced like fireflies but moved with intention, will-o'-the-wisps maybe, or forest spirits. Their glow wasn't harsh but soft, comforting even, casting ripples of color across the underbrush. They flitted between branches, spiraling around the man's sword and brushing against the jagged edges of his shield, like curious children daring to touch fire. A squirrel dashed across the mossy trail, chittering with no fear. A doe watched from the thicket, her eyes wide and unblinking. A brook wound its way beside the path, babbling in tongues older than even the elven songs. And Ichigo, despite his massive, smoldering form, moved with care, his padded paws brushing the leaves like he remembered what it meant to walk softly. For once there was peace, and in that moment of stillness the man's thoughts began to churn. "We've come far," he whispered, almost afraid to admit it aloud. "Too far to go back." The sword at his side had cooled, but he could still feel its pull like a heartbeat. The purple tech veins in his arms glowed faintly beneath his skin, pulsing with the same rhythm as the orb he should never have touched. He glanced sideways. Ichigo met his gaze with quiet understanding, as if they both knew this was the last time the world would ever feel this calm. A breeze pushed through the canopy, rustling the leaves like whispered warnings. Shiverwind Pass was near, and beyond that, Aelthar's Reach, or what remained of it. The sun pierced through the trees in fractured beams, casting gold and silver across the path. But in the back of the man's mind, he could still hear it, the echo of a voice like thunder. Reset, reformat, replace. He pulled his coat tighter. They didn't speak, but they understood. This was a lull, not an ending. The storm was still coming, and they were heading straight into it. By the time the twin moons crept into the sky, one cracked like a shattered mirror, the other full and watchful, they had made camp beneath an ancient tree with roots that twisted like serpents into the earth. The man didn't gather sticks. He didn't strike flint. Instead, he closed his eyes, focused on the hum in his hands, and with a simple motion, a burst of purple fire sprang to life. It crackled strangely, low and smooth, like a whisper traveling through a hollow cave. The flames danced upward in sharp angles, glitching for brief moments before settling again. They gave off no smoke, no scent of ash, only warmth and a color the forest had never known. Ichigo curled beside the flame, his monstrous form now peaceful in the shadows. The hellhound's deep breath sounded like the slow draw of a wind through canyon stone. He didn't sleep, but he rested, watching, always watching. The man sat with his back to the tree, arms resting on bent knees, eyes reflecting the strange purple fire. He thought of the centaur. That guardian hadn't flinched, hadn't staggered, hadn't even bled. The fireball had barely scorched his armor. Ichigo's devastating bark had pushed back soldiers and shattered stone, but not him. "We're not ready," the man whispered. He wasn't ashamed of the thought. Not anymore. They had power now, yes, weapons forged in some ancient, unknowable fire. But raw power wasn't enough. Not against an army born from nightmares, commanded by something that defied time and reason. They needed more. They needed training. They needed knowledge. And above all, they needed a guide in this broken, beautiful world. His gaze drifted up to the stars. They weren't the stars of home. These constellations danced and shifted when you weren't looking. A world that had been untouched by the glitch for centuries, maybe longer. A world with its own rules. "Where do we begin?" he muttered. Ichigo stirred, letting out a low rumble, not aggressive, not warning. Just a response. A reminder. They would figure it out, but tonight they would rest. Tomorrow they would start looking for someone who knew these lands. Someone who knew the way to Aelthar's Reach, if anything was left. Chapter 17. The Path to Eldergrove. The purple flames crackled low in their pit, casting long shadows beneath the canopy of Wispwood's twisted trees. Crickets sang. A stream whispered over stone nearby. But the man and his hound, no longer just a Shiba Inu, but a being reforged in the fire of realms, were not alone. From the darkness beyond the firelight, a voice rang out like music carved into stone. "I wondered when the stars would send you." The man stood quickly, hand at his blade. Ichigo snarled, eyes gleaming violet in the dark. But the figure who emerged bore no threat. Cloaked in silver green, his armor etched with symbols older than any tongue the man had heard, the elf moved with the weight of centuries. His face was sharp and kind, his eyes like the first light after storm. "I am Ilarion," he said, his voice calm but strong. "Son of Eldenvale, brother to Valor, whose path ended beneath broken skies." The man's breath caught. "Valor," he whispered. "He fought beside us. He died trying to stop the same evil that hunts us now." Ilarion's eyes closed for a moment, his hands folded before him, reverent. "He was the pride of our house," he said. "He wielded the blade of dawnlight, trained beneath the watchers of Highwall. We fought together in the Silver Thorns War. He was brave, fierce, and foolishly loyal." He stepped closer, his gaze falling to Ichigo, who remained still but alert. "And you," Ilarion said, "to the hound, are touched by power not born of this world." The man nodded. It changed him. It changed both of us. Ilarion circled the fire, then sat. His presence made even the forest hush. "This land you walk now, Aelthar's Reach, was once the heart of the Ninefold Kingdom. We elves lived not in castles of stone, but in towers of bark and starlight. We wove songs into armor, carved runes into the wind itself." He touched a scar beneath his collarbone. But then the rift opened. The man leaned in. You've seen it too? The darkness? Elarian's jaw tightened. I know not what to name it. It is not of flesh or fang, nor wind nor flame. It corrupts without blade, devours with no mouth. It is an unmaking, an ancient rot wearing the skin of fire and shadow. I have seen men vanish in its wake, turn to whispers. The man looked down at the fire. We call it the glitch master. But your words are better. It doesn't belong in your world or mine. Elarion raised his head. You believe this to be a creature of many worlds? The man nodded. I've seen what it does, and I've seen what it's building. A long silence passed between them. Even Ichigo's breathing slowed. Then you were brought here for a purpose, Elarion said. And I was tasked with guiding you. There is a mirror hidden deep in the stone roots of Eldergrove, a sacred place. It leads not forward, but sideways, into the old places where fate still weaves. The man met his eyes. Will it take us closer to this evil? Perhaps, Elarion said, or it may lead you where another blade waits, another hand willing to fight beside you. He rose, cloak billowing in the soft wind. Come, the forest will not keep its secrets for long, and neither can we afford to wait. Chapter 18. The Beast and the Merchant. They walked beneath a canopy of golden leaves and soft green light. The woods of this realm unlike any the man had ever seen, vibrant, alive, and humming with quiet magic. The trees whispered not with wind but memory, old and wise. Somewhere above, sunbeams broke through the leaves like golden blades. The moss beneath their feet was springy, comforting. Elarion moved with a grace born not only of elven blood but of endless training. His steps left no sound. His eyes missed nothing. He held his longbow loosely in one hand, a sword strapped across his back. At times he would pause, touch a tree, and listen as if the bark might speak. You fight like someone who has seen many battles, the man said, watching move. Elarion glanced over, a slight smile at the corner of his mouth. I began my training at 6 winters. By 12, I rode with the scouts of Eldergrove. There is no peace in our world, not truly, so we prepare. The man gave a small laugh, tired. Yeah, I guess. I prepared too, sort of. Elarion raised an eyebrow. Oh, I was a cashier, the man said. A what? I handled the gold, money. When people brought things to the counter, I gave them their total, bagged their goods. Elarion's laughter rang out, light and musical. A merchant, then, one of coin and ledgers. You did battle with numbers, not blades. Pretty much, the man said, chuckling despite himself. But here I am now, swinging swords, firing whatever this is. He lifted his left hand slightly, still sore from where dark flame had once curled. Elarion nodded solemnly, the humor fading from his voice. Many great warriors began life as something else. It is not the forge that defines the blade, but what emerges from it. They walked on in silence for a time. Birds called softly overhead. The distant trickle of a stream whispered between trees. The world was still, and for once kind. Then Elarion glanced at Ichigo, still in hellhound form, lumbering ahead in silence. The flames around his form had dimmed, smoldering quietly, more ember than inferno. Curious, Elarion said. Why does the beast remain in that form? Surely it burns its essence to stay that way. Power like that comes at a cost. The man blinked, surprised. You mean he doesn't have to stay like this? Elarion looked at him, confused. He has not returned to his true skin? It is rare, but some creatures, when bonded deeply, may shift form, but to remain in his war shape constantly, it will erode him, not just in body, but in spirit. The man's heart tightened. I didn't know he could turn back. I thought this was just what he became. Even the fiercest flame must cool, lest it consume the vessel, Elarion said, his gaze gentle now. Perhaps he does not know, or perhaps he fears losing what he's become. The man looked ahead at Ichigo, his massive spiked form moving like a shadow through the forest light. Then it's up to me, the man whispered, to help him remember who he was. Elarion placed a hand on his shoulder. You are no longer a merchant. You are a guide now, to both of you. Chapter 19. War Form. The trees stood silent as cathedral pillars. Light filtered through the canopy in thin green-gold veins, painting the earth in shifting mosaics. The wind whispered through Wispwood's higher branches, but down below, all was still, except for the slow, deliberate steps of 3 figures. A man, a Shiba Inu cloaked in a hellish form, and an elven warrior with eyes like starlight on midnight water. Elarion led, his silver-threaded armor catching glints of sunlight. His voice was low, melodic as he spoke, not to boast, but to pass on what had been kept alive for centuries. That form, he said, glancing back at Ichigo, should not be worn so casually. It is a gift, yes, but a gift forged in old blood. The man looked down at his dog, his partner, who now bore the shape of a shadowy beast, towering, broad, cloaked in flickering black and purple fire. Even now, Ichigo's solid violet eyes gleamed with an otherworldly glow, and his tail, once curled with cheerful pride, now flowed behind him like a banner of silent flame. "Does it have a name?" the man asked, still unsure if he wanted to know. Alarion nodded solemnly. "We called it Zar Shakai in the old tongue. Roughly it means the spirit mantle of war, a power drawn from deep wells beneath the world, neither wholly good nor evil, only awakened by great need and sustained by pain." The man flinched. "And if it's used too long?" Alarion stopped, turning fully now. His face was grave. "Then the soul it clings to is swallowed, not destroyed, not lost, but buried beneath endless wrath. The beast will forget itself, and worse, it may remember only the will of the one who forged that mantle in the first place." The man looked back to Ichigo, no, war form Ichigo, and felt a stab of guilt. He never asked for this. Neither of them had. "Can he change back?" he asked, voice soft. "He must choose to," Alarion said. "But it is not simply a choice of thought. He must feel the shape he once was. Remember the joy of a simpler frame, the warmth of your bond. His soul must tug itself out of the mantle." The man knelt, looking up at the beast who had once fit in the crook of his arm during storms and long nights of gaming marathons. "Come on, bud," he said gently. "Let it go. Come back." For a long moment, nothing. Then the flames flickered. The spikes along Ichigo's neck pulled inward. His frame began to shrink, muscles receding like tides rolling back. His tail curled. The violet fire sputtered and died. And there, panting and blinking in the sunlight, stood the little Shiba Inu once more. Ichigo sneezed, shook his fur out with a wag of his tail, and trotted a circle around the man like nothing had happened. The man laughed, the sound sharp with relief. "You little jerk," he whispered, pulling him into a hug. "You scared the hell out of me." Alarion smiled faintly, though his gaze never left the road ahead. He'll need that form again soon, but now he knows it does not define him. They continued onward, deeper into Wispwood. Above them, the trees swayed in rhythm to ancient winds, and far off, unseen, unheard, the earth began to hum with movement. Chapter 19, Warform Awakened, Part 2. The trees thinned as they followed the winding path, moonlight weaving silver threads through the canopy above. Alarion walked ahead with the grace of his kind, steps quiet against the mossy forest floor. The man kept pace, his thoughts heavy with everything they had endured, and everything yet to come. "Your beast," Alarion said suddenly, his tone less harsh now, more curious. He returned to his smaller form easily, yet his power still lingers. "That mark upon him, it is not from our realm." The man looked down at Ichigo, now trotting beside him in his regular Shiba Inu form, save for the faint purple ember glow pulsing deep within his fur. The transformation had faded, but its memory hadn't. "War form. Ichigo's different now," the man said quietly. "But he's still my pup." Alarion nodded, then turned his eyes toward the man. "And you wear the blessing of the same flame. The old power surges through your blood, but I doubt you understand it." "I don't," the man admitted. "But I feel it, like something waiting to be used." "Not used," the elf corrected. "Channeled, controlled." Alarion stopped and motioned for the man to ready himself. "Show me what you've learned." The man hesitated, then took a breath. His right hand reached toward the sword at his side, the golden blade now pulsing with violet fire. With a thought, he summoned the fireball in his left palm. It swirled slowly, dark and unstable, until he focused, narrowed his eyes like he had done in the tower. With a roar, he launched it forward, striking a distant boulder and exploding in a bloom of flickering black and purple flame. He blinked. He hadn't even felt the energy drain. Alarion studied him. "Faster than before. Your arms move like those of a knight seasoned in 1,000 battles. Yet you claim you were once a coin handler?" The man gave a wry smile. "Cashier, actually," Alarion chuckled. "A merchant warrior, then." "I guess." They resumed walking. The man found his strides longer, his legs carrying him farther with less effort. When he stepped over roots or creeks, he did so effortlessly, almost leaping. There was a rhythm in his movement, a flow as if he were following invisible footsteps laid down by a fighter who had trained for a lifetime. "It will grow stronger," Ilarion said, watching him. "But power without mastery is a sword without a hilt. It will cut you." The man clenched his fists, feeling the heat ripple across his palms like his skin was inches above a campfire. He wasn't just stronger, he was becoming something else. They walked quietly beneath the shimmer of dancing leaves, boots pressing into moss-covered roots. A wind shifted through the trees, like breath exhaled from the forest itself, ancient, watchful. Ilarion slowed, eyes narrowed as if listening not to sound, but to memory. "This bond you share," the elf finally said, voice low and reverent, "it is unlike any I have seen. There are legends, songs sung long before my time, of warriors tied to beasts through soul thread. But even those were tales, not truths." The man furrowed his brow. "Soul thread?" Ilarion nodded. "A force, older than light and older than shadow. When two spirits are so deeply entwined, their strengths, their wounds, their fates become shared. But this," he gestured toward Ichigo, who padded beside them in his smaller, normal Shiba Inu form, "this is deeper still. Your power, whatever world it hails from, was never meant to be split between two. And yet here it lives, in you, in him." Ichigo glanced back, ears flicking, as if he understood. The man looked down at his hand. The faint purple glow pulsed in the veins of his wrist, same as Ichigo's fur still faintly shimmered with echoing light. He had believed they were merely close, lifelong companions, bound by loyalty and love. But this, you're saying, we're sharing something we're not supposed to? "Not supposed to," Ilarion repeated, "but somehow are. The energy inside you, inside both of you, it is not of this land, and yet it has rooted itself in both your hearts. What you wield is not a blessing nor a curse alone. It is choice, forged in unity. Your souls bleed together. That is why you endured the war form, why he didn't lose himself." The man swallowed hard. A breeze tugged at his coat. His thoughts darkened for a moment. What if they hadn't made it? What if the power had consumed Ichigo fully? What if next time it did? Ilarion continued, "But know this, power shared must be balanced. You grow stronger because of him, and he because of you. But should that thread fray, should fear or anger sever it, what you have built may collapse in ruin." They said nothing for a while. Only the sounds of birdsong and the rush of a nearby creek kept the silence from stretching too long. Finally, the man crouched beside Ichigo and scratched gently behind his ears. "I guess we've always been more than just man and dog, huh?" "Uh-huh." Ichigo licked his hand once, then resumed walking, tail wagging slow. "What binds you is rare and powerful. Nurture it or lose it." And with that, they stepped forward toward a fate not just shared, but forged. Chapter 20. Fire from the Sky. The woods ended without warning. One moment, the trio walked beneath a cathedral of trees, cool shadows blanketing the mossy ground. The next, the canopy opened into a wide clearing, sun-drenched and too quiet. The stillness rang like a warning. Then came the roar, a gut-deep, ancient scream that tore across the sky and split the peace like shattered glass. The man didn't have time to react, only to duck instinctively as a blur passed overhead. A second roar, closer. Then a shadow blanketed the clearing, wings outstretched, massive and scarred. "Wyvern!" Ilarion's voice cut through the rising panic like a blade. His bow was already out, his posture fluid, eyes locked skyward. "Run!" The man didn't think. He scooped Ichigo into his arms. The Shiba Inu didn't struggle, didn't growl. He only trembled. The war form didn't come. Another pass. This time, flame. Fire rained down in a sweeping arc, igniting a row of bushes and turning the dry grass to ash. The heat hit like a furnace. The man dove behind a stone outcropping, holding Ichigo tight, the Lionheart shield covering them both. Ilarion stayed in the open, dancing with the wind. He leapt, rolled, and fired, his arrows like streaks of moonlight. The wyvern dodged them with surprising speed, banking hard and shrieking as it turned for another run. This was no random beast. This was a predator, a guardian. Ilarion moved like a storm-given form, sliding across the dirt, loosing arrows that crackled with magical energy. He struck the wyvern's wing, and the creature staggered midair, roaring in fury. Still, the man could only watch. He peered from behind the rock, shame burning hotter than the fire surrounding them. He had power now, fire in his veins, a sword at his side. But in this moment, he was just a man with a terrified dog, useless while a warrior fought and bled for him. The wyvern landed with a crash, claws digging trenches in the earth. It was massive, easily the size of a truck, covered in crimson scales that shimmered like hot metal. Its tail swung like a wrecking ball, knocking over trees as it lunged at Ilarion. The elf rolled beneath the strike, stabbing upward with a curved dagger. The blade hit true under the jaw, and the wyvern reared back, howling, "Do something!" Ilarion shouted across the clearing, his voice tinged with frustration. "Your power is not for hiding." The man looked down at Ichigo. The Shiba Inu whimpered, nose buried in his chest. "No flames, no war form, just fear." "We're not ready," the man whispered. But then he looked at the flames licking the edge of the trees, at the bloodied elf staggering under the weight of his opponent, at the massive beast raising its head to strike once more, and something clicked. He set Ichigo down gently, drew the golden sword from his hip. It hummed in his hand, reacting to his will. His body ached, his legs shook, but he stood. He stepped out from behind the rock, and the wyvern turned to face him. Its eyes burned yellow, ancient and cruel. "Over here," the man shouted, throwing his arm forward. A fireball launched, sloppy, wild, but real. It missed. The wyvern roared, stomping toward him now, tail sweeping. He rolled, barely avoiding the strike. The shield slammed into the ground beside him, blocking debris. He rose again, chest heaving. Another fireball. This one hit the wyvern's shoulder. It snarled and turned, confused by the sudden heat. The man wasn't strong, not yet, but he was in the fight. Ilarion took the opening, one final arrow buried into the beast's eye. The wyvern screamed once, a horrifying bone-deep noise, then collapsed in a storm of smoke and blood. The clearing went still. The man stood shaking, soot covering his face, sword lowered. Ilarion approached, limping slightly, and offered a nod of approval. "You've more than merchant's blood in you, after all," the elf said. Ichigo padded up beside them, his small frame brushing the man's shin. No war form, no fire, but the bond between them, stronger than ever. Chapter 21. Name of Fire and Ash. The wyvern's carcass still steamed, blood soaking into the forest floor, when the elf finally spoke. "You hesitate," Ilarion said, his voice calm but edged like a sword unsheathed. "Your spirit holds power, but without focus, that power will consume you. You must channel it, direct it, or it will feed on you like fire eats dry wood." The man stared at his hands, still trembling from the fight, still aching with that strange rock burning warmth beneath the skin. He could feel it, the dark purple veins that pulsed like embers under his flesh, responding to his fear, his fury, his instincts. He looked at Ichigo, walking beside him now as if the world hadn't just almost ended. Still just a dog, still his. But for how long? Ilarion stepped closer. "What is your name, outsider? I have shared mine. I have bled beside you. Do not cloak yourself in shadows now." The man opened his mouth. A dozen answers, and none rising to the surface. He hadn't said it aloud in days, weeks, maybe longer. The scream came before the shadow. A pitch-black shriek from the sky, splitting the trees in half with its sound alone. The canopy exploded, leaves and branches flung like shrapnel as not one but 3 wyverns dropped from the sky, wings slicing the air like guillotines. The ground shuddered as they landed. Each one larger than the last, spines along their backs glowing with heat, jaws open and fuming. One exhaled flame immediately, a tight spiral that set the tree line ablaze. "Move!" Ilarion shouted, pushing the man and Ichigo behind a fallen tree as the second wyvern pounced. The third circled overhead, letting out another cry. A command, maybe. They were coordinated this time. Intentional. Not beasts. Hunters. The ambush begins. The man drew his sword mid-roll, purple flames flaring along the golden edge. His eyes met the elf's, and for the first time they didn't see panic. They saw resolve. But the elf wasn't smiling. "This is not like before," Ilarion called over the chaos. "These are war beasts, forged, controlled, sent." "By who?" the man shouted, ducking as a wyvern tail crashed into the dirt beside him. Ilarion fired 3 arrows in rapid succession, one for each eye of the center beast. Only one struck true. The other 2 bounced off like pebbles on steel. "They don't bleed the same," the elf muttered. Ichigo stood frozen, hackles raised. He let out a soft growl, but the flames didn't come. Not yet. The man stepped forward, fireball swirling in his hand, and screamed, "Now!" The battlefield erupted. Chapter 21. Name of Fire and Ash Part 2. Ichigo snarled, his paws digging into the dirt. The black-purple flames that once surged from his body flickered now, struggling against some invisible resistance. His form was massive, lion-sized still, but his power wasn't igniting. Not yet. The second wyvern came down like a storm, jaws open, teeth the size of daggers aiming straight for the man. He didn't flinch. Instead, he lunged forward, straight into the beast's open mouth, ducked low, and with a roar of defiance, swept his golden flame-wrapped sword upward in a clean arc. Shh! The blade cut through scale and muscle like silk, cleaving the wyvern clean in half from belly to spine. Blood erupted in sheets, steaming and blackened, painting the battlefield in gore. The two halves of the creature hit the ground with a wet, slapping thud. The man stood panting, drenched, steam rising from his blade and armor as if the fire inside him had started to burn through the steel. Alarion didn't stop. The elf pivoted gracefully, bowstring taut with another glowing arrow. He fired, direct hit, embedding deep in the chest of the third wyvern as it took to the skies. But it didn't fall. It screamed, wounded, but flapped hard and ascended, wings struggling under the damage, blood misting the air behind it. "Damn it!" Alarion hissed, drawing another arrow but knowing it was too far now. Then he smirked. "Watch." He let out a sharp whistling note, high, swift, controlled. From beyond the clouds, a thunderous cry shattered the air. Boom! A golden blur crashed through the sky like a meteor, wings wide, claws out, feathers trailing light. A griffin, majestic and feral, slammed into the airborne wyvern mid-flight. Talons tore into flesh, wings beat like war drums. The wyvern shrieked in terror, but it never hit the ground in one piece. The griffin shredded it into bits, chunks of wing and scale scattering across the forest canopy like leaves in a storm. Then, just as swiftly, the griffin vanished into the clouds, silent, deadly, divine. Alarion lowered his bow. "My sister's companion," he said softly. "He never misses." The battlefield was silent again. 3 beasts defeated, but the air still felt heavy, like something worse was coming. Ichigo stood at the edge of the clearing, eyes low, flames flickering again but faint. The man approached him, placing a hand on his massive shoulder. "Next time," he whispered, "we rise together." Alarion watched from the edge of the woods, his expression unreadable. "You've taken your first step, warrior, but only just. There are things coming, things that make these skyborn beasts look like flies." Chapter 22, The Blood That Binds. The forest quieted again, not in fear, but in reverence. Ash still lingered in the air from the wyvern's attack. Burned grass curled along the edges of the clearing. And amidst it all, Ichigo sat, no longer a hellhound nor a lion-sized beast, but his true self once more, fur matted, ears drooping, eyes flickering with guilt he couldn't voice. The man knelt beside him, brushing a hand along his Shiba Inu stained coat. "You did what you could, buddy. That's all we can ask for." Alarion stepped over, graceful even after battle, his golden armor only lightly scuffed, his long white braid streaked with a line of ichor from a wyvern's vein. "Don't worry, pup," the elf said gently, kneeling down and cupping Ichigo's chin. "Even our mightiest steeds needed training, and so do you, just like your master." Ichigo looked up at him, then at the man, as if understanding. The elf rose. "Come. There's a spring near here. You smell like death. And I'm not teaching anyone soaked in dragon bile." They moved as one, man, pup, and elf, along a narrow path that dipped into a glade untouched by fire or fight. There, tucked between moss-covered rocks and swaying ferns, a crystal pond shimmered under the sunlight, its surface dancing with motes of light and tiny sky-glow bugs. The air here smelled like mint and wet stone. The chaos of war felt 1,000 miles away. The man knelt at the edge, dipping his hands in. The water was cold, sharp with purity. He splashed it on his face and let it run down his arms, watching as the blood from monsters and his own scrapes swirled away like ink in glass. Ichigo stepped in next, tail wagging just slightly now. He plopped down, letting the cool water soak his fur, lifting the red and the grime. His brown coat, what was left of it, still shimmered under the sun. He let out a small sneeze and then a huff, as if reclaiming some small dignity. Alarion didn't bother washing. He stood watch, eyes scanning the tree line. "There are things in this land far worse than wyverns," he said. This was merely a warning. The man didn't reply. He watched the water run clean again. He stared into his reflection, still glowing faintly, still marked by that power that refused to name itself. He looked at Ichigo, who was now paddling playfully toward a lily pad. And for a brief moment, he smiled. They were still alive, still fighting, and tomorrow they would be stronger. Chapter 23, The Shifting Mirror. The forest grew darker with every step. They had left the glistening creek and peaceful pond behind. The blood washed from their bodies, but not their minds. Each crunch beneath their boots reminded them that peace in this world was short-lived. The elf Ilarion raised a hand, his sharp ears twitching. "Quiet now," he whispered in his elegant tongue. "There's something breathing, heavy and slow, a beast at rest." Ahead, slumped against a jagged boulder, was a hulking orc. Nearly 10 feet tall, its greenish-gray skin shimmered faintly under the broken shafts of light peeking through the canopy. A crude axe the size of a tree trunk rested beside it. The orc's chest rose and fell like a furnace, slow, labored, snoring. It was asleep. The cave it guarded looked like the hollowed mouth of a mountain beast, sharp stalactites like teeth, a darkness that breathed. Ilarion turned to the man and Ichigo, who had returned to his normal Shiba form. The elf's tone was still and precise. "This one does not deserve the dignity of awakening." With a fluid grace, Ilarion leapt from the shadows. His blade hummed in the air, barely seen before it was sheathed again. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, a soft shh as the orc's throat opened like torn parchment. Its eyes never even opened. It slumped over, blood pooling beneath it, steaming on the rocks. The man watched, swallowing hard. "Remind me not to piss him off," he muttered to Ichigo, who gave a soft woof in agreement. They moved past the dead beast, stepping into the mouth of the cave. Chapter 24, War Form Unleashed. The cave rumbled with distant clanks and hammer strikes, orcs toiling away, unaware of the storm about to befall them. Then it happened. A sudden scrape of stone under paw. Ichigo slipped. Dozens of orc heads snapped toward the noise. "Go!" the man yelled. But Ichigo didn't run. He transformed. In a single explosive burst, purple-black flames erupted from his body, surging like a tide of raw fury. His form expanded. Legs thickening, fangs stretching, his frame warping into the towering silhouette of a hellish beast. The once curled Shiba tail now a streak of fire, whipping behind him like a flaming blade. His paws pounded the earth like war drums. And then, the bark. It wasn't a sound. It was a weapon, a cataclysm. A thunderous shockwave exploded from his throat, crashing into the cavern walls like a god's hammer. Orcs went airborne, flung like ragdolls into molten pits, into jagged stone, or slammed with such force that bones shattered on impact. Weapons, hundreds of them, scattered through the air like metallic confetti. Some spun wildly, embedding into the cavern's ceiling. Others landed blade first in the very chests of their former wielders. Screams echoed. Chaos bloomed, and Ichigo stood at the center, burning, snarling, eyes glowing like twin suns of the underworld. The man reached for his sword, but stopped. He didn't need it. This was Ichigo's battle now. The war form had taken over, and for the first time, it was in full control. One orc charged through the smoke, massive and armored. Ichigo ducked low and launched upward, jaws wide. There was a crack, a flash of purple flame, and the brute's head hit the ground long before his body did. Another orc tried to run. He didn't make it far. A single swipe of Ichigo's flaming claw sent him hurtling off a ledge into darkness. The elf, stunned, watched from the shadows. "By the stars," he whispered. "That's no beast. That's a weapon." As the last orc fell screaming into the black, silence reclaimed the cave. The flames faded. Ichigo stood atop the broken stone, chest rising, power simmering like coals in a dying forge. And for a long, awful moment, he did not change back. Chapter 25, The Beast and the Bear. The cave fell behind them, thick with blood, fire, and echoes of battle. But Ichigo did not slow. He charged out of the darkness, paws pounding the earth like war drums, purple-black flames trailing behind him. The man called after him, his voice raw and desperate. "Ichigo, wait!" But the war form didn't wait, didn't listen, didn't see. This wasn't Ichigo. This was rage unchained. The elf grabbed the man's arm. "He's still shifting. You must stop him, or he may never return." Outside, the forest was still, until it wasn't. A roar, low, guttural. Not from Ichigo, from something wild. The man and the elf broke through the tree line just in time to see it. A bear, massive, ancient, its coat scarred by a lifetime of survival, stood at the edge of a stream, rising to full height as Ichigo thundered toward it. The bear bellowed, challenging the flames. It had no idea what it was facing, but instinct would not let it back down. "No," the man whispered. Ichigo, don't. But the war beast leapt. They collided in a storm of teeth, claws, and fury. The bear swung first, thick paws slamming into Ichigo's side. But Ichigo didn't falter. He twisted midair, flames erupting from his mane as he latched onto the bear's shoulder, claws ripping through fur and hide. The roar that followed shook the trees. They tumbled into the creek. Water hissed as it touched Ichigo's flames. The bear bucked and clawed, trying to shake him loose, but Ichigo was relentless. This wasn't combat. This was dominance. The fire in his body refused to cool. The beast inside refused to stop. Call to him, the elf ordered. Now! The man stepped forward, voice cracking. Ichigo, this isn't who you are. The bear let out a pained groan. Ichigo stood atop its back now, chest heaving, eyes glowing solid purple. For a moment, the killing blow hung in the air. The forest held its breath. The man took a step forward. You're not a weapon. You're my pup. Remember who you are. And something in Ichigo twitched. His body shimmered. The flames stuttered, but he didn't move. The bear was still, wide-eyed, broken but alive. The man whispered one last time, trembling. Please, Ichigo, come back. The war form growled, but it was softer now, uneven, almost confused. Ichigo stepped down. The bear crawled away into the trees, dragging itself into the wilds. The man fell to his knees, drained. The elf nodded once, solemn. The fire within him is mighty, but if you cannot master it, it will consume you both. As the last flickers of purple flame licked the air, the man looked up at his companion, monster, protector, friend, and wondered if the true battle had only just begun. Chapter 26, A Price for Power. The stream trickled quietly again. Ash still hung in the air, and the scent of burnt fur and wet earth lingered like regret. Ichigo, once again his small Shiba Inu self, stood beside the man, ears pinned back, tail low, no longer curled with pride. He looked up, then away, ashamed as if some part of him remembered what he'd done, or nearly done. Then came a sound. A soft whimper. From the woods near the scorched clearing, two small figures emerged, barely visible in the underbrush. Brown, wide-eyed, trembling. Cubs. The man froze. The elf stepped forward slowly, cloak brushing the forest floor. His expression was grim, gaze fixed on the little ones. They didn't run. They just watched, unaware of the war that had just nearly taken their mother from them. The man whispered, Those are. The elf nodded once, quietly. Her kin. Her legacy. A deeper silence fell between them. Ichigo nearly killed them too, the man muttered, pain tightening in his throat. Not Ichigo, the elf said. The fire. He turned to them, voice calm but firm. This is the cost. The beasts within you both cannot be called upon without consequence. You must learn balance, or you will destroy more than you protect. Ichigo let out a low whine, glancing toward the cubs, then tucked his head under the man's hand. The man knelt beside him, rubbing his back gently. It's okay, buddy. I know you didn't mean to. But doubt clung like fog. The elf looked toward the mountains beyond the trees. We must seek aid, guidance, someone who understands this realm's oldest magics. There are still forces in the north that remember what it means to tame the untamable. The man stood, brushing dirt from his pants, resolve settling in. Where do we go? The elf answered without hesitation. North, through Shiverwind Pass, to Eldergrove. The cubs slowly turned and wandered back into the trees, and behind them the wind carried a warning. Balance or ruin, power or peace. The journey was no longer just to stop the Glitchmaster, it was to stop themselves. The elf knelt by the stream, dipping his fingers into the cool current as if reading it like a scroll. The water shimmered, reflecting not just the sky, but concern. He turned toward the man, eyes solemn. We cannot proceed to the mirror. Not yet. The man blinked. Why? We're so close. The elf stood slowly, brushing damp earth from his palms. Because if we do, Ichigo may not return. Not truly. The Shiba Inu looked up at them both still, quiet, exhausted. There is an elder who resides in the frost-swept shadows of Shiverwind Pass, the elf continued. He is ancient, older than this age, older than my kin. We call him Thalorwyn. The name carried weight, like an echo passed down through stone halls and whispered in old songs. He was once a beast tamer, the elf said, voice lower now. A soulbinder, one who could calm the rage of dragons and hush the wails of corrupted spirits. If any still walk this world who can help your companion, it is him. The man frowned. And if he won't, then your pup is lost, the elf said flatly. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. The longer he walks in that war form uncontrolled, the more it consumes what he was. The man looked to Ichigo, small again, eyes heavy, tail low. But something lingered, a flicker in his gaze, not just exhaustion, fear. Then we go, the man said firmly. The mirror can wait. Ichigo can't. The elf gave a small nod of approval. Shiverwind is cruel, frozen and restless, but if we're swift and wise, we may yet reach Thalorwyn in time. Above them, the trees began to sway with a colder wind. The journey had changed. It was no longer about battle. It was about salvation. Chapter 27, March of the Damned. The trees had thinned, their trunks crooked and frostbitten. Snow clung to the branches like weary travelers refusing to fall. Shiverwind Pass loomed ahead, an icy crescent of land that whispered with wind and forgotten voices. The trio moved silently, each footstep swallowed by the cold hush of the woods. But the man slowed, then stopped, and then he dropped, to his knees. His hands trembled, eyes wide but vacant, pupils dilated. The world spun away. He was no longer in the woods. He was there, somewhere else, a void, a dead land. Ash rained from the sky, falling on broken towers and cracked stone. In the distance, silhouettes, thousands, marched in synchronized thunder, boots pounding scorched earth with soulless rhythm. The army had grown, no longer wild or chaotic, now uniform, controlled. Their armor gleamed with static veins, their bodies fused with dark tech and twisted flesh, refined into perfect instruments of war. And leading them, he saw it, him, the Glitch Master. No longer a warped figure of spasming pixels, but solid, real. A towering entity cloaked in living corruption, purple fire crackling from his crown of iron wires. He raised a single gauntlet, and the army moved forward, toward a mirror. A massive, glassy surface planted like a gateway in the middle of the dead land. They were coming through. The man gasped, and the vision shattered. His knees hit the frozen ground of Shiverwind Pass with a sharp thud. Ichigo barked. The elf spun around, sword drawn. What is it? The man rose slowly, breath steaming, hands shaking. They're coming. The Glitch Master, his army. It's bigger now, organized. They're using the mirror. Which mirror? The elf asked, voice sharp. I don't know, the man said. But wherever it leads, it's somewhere real. Somewhere they can destroy. The elf went quiet, a grim weight settling over his expression. We must not delay, he said. If what you say is true, then I must return to Eldergrove. My people must be readied. The old alliances, the ancient houses, they must unite once more. He looked toward the east where the snow met sky. The mirrors must be closed or guarded. The war is no longer in your world or mine alone. It is everywhere. The man nodded. His grip tightened around the hilt of his sword. Ichigo stood beside him, calm now, but with the silent fire still glowing in his eyes. The battle was coming, but not today. Today they would find Thalorwyn and prepare for war. Thanks for listening to Glitched Out, Reformat, a story of broken worlds, remembered power, and the fight to stay human. If you enjoyed the journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this audiobook with someone who's still got a little spark left in them. Hard copies will be available soon on Amazon, so be sure to pick one up once they drop and hold the glitch in your hands. Your support means the world. It helps us keep creating, keeps Ichigo's flame burning, and lets stories like this keep breaking through the static. And above all else, don't forget to power up. We'll see you on the other side.